Hi, my name's Michelle, and today I'm gonna do a solo video like the way they do in porn. Just kidding. Today I'm doing a solo video to talk about my experience through divorce while my sister sits behind the camera and conducts an interview-like video. So I hope you guys enjoy. I met him, my husband. Fast forward to high school. We went to the same high school together. And then eventually we started having classes together. So then from there on, we started to get to know each other. I would say we got together 11th grade, towards senior year. We were together pretty much all senior year. And then from there on, history. It was a really good relationship. It was fun. We had a lot of common interest. We really enjoyed being around each other. It was great. In my eyes in the beginning, it was great. We eventually moved in with each other once shortly after Danica was born. Moved in with my sister Andy and then my nephew, and we lived together for the whole marriage. The marriage in the beginning was great, and I would say the only reason why we got married was because he wanted to join the Air Force. So in order for us to still stay together, we had to be married. But he never really went through with that plan. So from there on, that day when we did it, we were married. Which didn't bother me because I had a feeling the way things were going, that I knew we were going to be married and we were going to be, in my eyes, we were going to be together forever. Because I really loved him. He was great. And in that time, I couldn't see myself with anybody else. He was a really good support system. He was always there for me. He was there for my sister. He was there for my nephew. He was there for everybody. Not only was he a good partner at that time, but he was also a really good friend to everybody else.
So when you say arguments, like what began to happen or what changed?
So when he started falling short with finances, that really started to get to me, and that is what our arguments were based around. Our finances, money. It got to the point where whatever he was receiving from unemployment just wasn't enough. So then I was like, okay, as a couple, we need to figure something out. But pretty much at the end of the day, there was times where he couldn't pull his own weight. And that really bothered me because then as a couple, it kind of became down to one person to be like, then somebody needs to figure it out. And that fell on me. And that's where it really started to bother me.
What do you think you could have done differently at that point in the marriage to try to either help him out or just help the marriage as a whole?
Initially, at that moment, I thought I was being helpful by giving him the space that he needed to do the career transition that he wanted. I thought, I'm being supportive, I'm here for you, do the career move, do whatever you think is necessary for you to be happy, because from what he would tell me, he wasn't happy there. But before he left, I was like, let's make sure we have a plan on what you're going to do after you leave, because it was a pretty good job. And he was like, I want to go to school and I want to become a chef.
Why don't you think he went through with schooling?
I don't know. I don't know if he thought it was...
Did you bother to ask him?
No.
So you just didn't think it was weird that he didn't want to do it? Something that...
I just thought that maybe it was too many steps to get where he wanted.
But did you ask him that, or you're just assuming that that's what happened?
I'm assuming that that's what happened.
So then what happened after he didn't go through with school, he was on unemployment, and what happened? What happened to the marriage after that?
We were still okay. It was just about navigating our finances, seeing how bills were going to get paid on time, seeing how the rent was going to get paid on time.
And then what happened?
So then eventually he did find a job, a minimum wage job. So then my issue was, this temporary job, this minimum wage job was supposed to be temporary, like very short, until we found something that paid more. Well, he found something that paid more and was more stable, because that minimum wage job was not cutting it at all. At all. And that's where more of the arguing started. I can't pay this, I can't pay that. Your job is not helping that much to cover what we need to cover. I always ended up paying more of the share than anything.
So in other words, you began to resent him because you were paying the majority of the bills.
To an extent. I really tried not to see it that way, but I think it was hard for me. And the arguments were always the same. They were always about the finances, not making ends meet.
So then what would happen if the bills weren't getting paid?
We were either late or I had to figure something out on how to pay it.
So it fell on you.
Pretty much.
So he wouldn't go out of his way to try to figure something else out to pay the bills.
Not all the time. Sometimes his mom would really help us out a lot. There was times where his mom really helped us out a lot. But no, at times I really didn't see a lot of effort. Because at the end of the day, regardless, I would make it clear these things need to get paid.
And how long did this whole situation go on for?
This went on for 3 years. Where that's how long the relationship was rocky. Up and down, arguing.
Aside from the money issues, what were there any other issues that were coming up, or any other things that you guys were fighting or arguing about as a result?
No, I think most of our arguments revolved around money, him getting a better job, or trying to figure out how to pay things in general.
So then when did you realize that you were heading towards divorce?
I think for me, what really did it to really end the relationship, like end it, where one of us had to go, was we had an argument we were having an argument in the bathroom, and he kind of snapped at me and raised his voice, and I was really surprised because when we would argue, we would never yell at each other or disrespect each other. But this time, it felt different. And I feel like after that argument, I was done. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. I was like, this is it. I'm not going to be disrespected anymore. You have to go. And I told him to leave.
And then what happened when he left? Was it just like a temporary separation? Was it just like go stay somewhere for a day and come back tomorrow? Like, what did the situation look like?
It was like, you need to move out because we're not getting along anymore. In my mind, I thought we needed a break. We needed to be physically away from each other. Like, we need just a break and hopefully figure things out.
Did you guys actually have a conversation about it?
After he left? No.
So it was just assumed. Everything was assumed.
He had written me an email. It was never really in person. He wrote me an email on how sorry he was, how things ended up, and how it just ended in general.
What ended?
Our relationship.
So then at that point, you guys were both calling it quits.
Yes. I think the way it seemed to me is since that's what I wanted, he was like, if that's what you want, then. Because after that, we never really talked about it.
Why not?
I think I was just at a point where I was just exhausted. I was exhausted of doing all the talking. I was exhausted of, in my mind, of doing all the work, of trying to make it work. And I would hope that the break would make him realize, or maybe change his mind on things that needed to change. And I also needed that break for myself to reflect on it and see what is it that I really wanted out of it. The things that I needed to work on. But that never happened.
Was there ever any cheating involved?
Yes, I cheated. And I told him about it because I felt real guilty about it.
When did that happen?
2017.
But this was before him moving out.
Yes.
So before you guys were officially broken up.
Yes. I never knew if he ever cheated, but I did confront him about pictures that I had found on his phone.
That same year?
Yes.
What kind of pictures?
Of some girl, like half naked.
And what was his response?
At that time, he was doing Lyft. The girl left her phone in the car. He returned it. And that's how she repaid him. Or thanked him. With those pictures.
That was his response.
That was the response.
And what did you say?
I didn't believe it.
But he never admitted to anything else?
No.
How much of you guys breaking up do you think had to do with the cheating?
I don't think a lot of it. I think a very small portion. I think, in my mind, what really led to the breakup was the arguing.
Well, hold on. Let's go back up a little bit. When you told him you did cheat, what was his response?
His response was he was trying to be understanding of the situation. Kind of like, maybe it was my fault that, as in his eyes, that led me to do something like that. But I was like, none of it's your fault. That was a decision that I had made.
So he didn't break up with you after you told him?
No. In the past, with my depression and everything else, I knew how to handle, I knew how to cope. But this was very foreign to me, and it was just kind of like, what do I do? How do I move on? So going back to therapy helped me to cope with being alone and moving on, trying to move forward from being divorced, from being married to being divorced and single.
Do you think you hold yourself accountable for all the things you did wrong in the relationship?
I think in the beginning I didn't. But I think with going to therapy, I started to see where I fell short. Throwing in the towel too quick on the relationship, not giving enough time and space on maybe something that he was going through, because eventually our arguments turned into me talking and him just not responding. And that's how it was. And it would really frustrate me.
Do you think that there was a lot that went unsaid on his part in the relationship?
Yes.
Why do you think?
Throughout our whole relationship, he was never much of a big talker. on sharing his feelings. He was really good in everything else, as a dad, as a provider in the beginning, all of that. He was great. But when it really came down to sharing feelings, that wasn't a big part on where he would share a lot. I was like, maybe he's going through something that at the moment he can't share with me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, but maybe you could share with somebody else. Or maybe even consider therapy if you feel like I'm not a fit to share these things with.
Did he ever go to therapy?
I think he tried it like once or twice.
How do you deal with all the emotions as they come up? Because I'm sure it's not every day that you think about it, but when it does, how do you deal with it?
I think it makes me sad the way it just really ended, with a lot of unsaid. I think I've learned to sit with my feelings. I've learned to sit with being single, being divorced, and moving on.
Do you think there'll be a time when you can actually have a sit-down an honest conversation with him about how you felt and like your experience of things?
Yeah, I feel like that would help me with a lot of closure.
How are things now that you have to co-parent with him, with Danica?
We have a good relationship co-parenting with Danica. Our communication about Danica is good. Pretty much that's the only time we really communicate, when it has to do with Danica, her schedule. It's good. We get along. We were able to tell each other what is it that Danica needs. Pretty much everything revolves around Danica's needs.
How do you think Danica's doing with the divorce?
I think initially she wasn't doing good with it. I think it was really hard for her to wrap her head around that we were going to get a divorce, that we got a divorce. And really talking to her, she came around with, mom and dad are not getting back together. And she also came around with liking his current partner.